Hello everybody, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening depending on where you are in this amazing world. My name is Donovan Jolly, and welcome everybody once again for another amazing video of DIY investing. As you guys know, today is Election Day 2020, where we are going to find out who is going to be the next President of the United States. This is going to cause a lot of indecision inside of the markets, and they're reflective inside of their charts. So today, we're going to go through every single one of the major indices, and we're going to go through crypto, we're going to go through gold, we're going to go through the stock market, and we're going to take a look at every single chart that I can find that's going to perfectly explain what is going to be happening over the next couple weeks as we figure out what happens with this election. If you're new and just finding this channel, always remember to do me a favor by leaving a like, comment, and subscribing to this channel for more updates. Make sure that you guys click that notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos like the one provided for you here. And always remember, guys, to join the fastest growing and the very best Discord community in crypto. My server has over 17,000 members, and it's growing so fast. I'd love if you guys would join. It's free for anybody that wants to. All you guys got to do to join is click inside the description of this video, and they're going to find the invitation link to my Discord server. On the Discord server, I also offer my more exclusive content like my VIP course and signals. So if you guys want to get access to my private groups, follow along with the trades that I take, copy my portfolio, then make sure you guys stay all the way to the end of this video, because then I'm taking a couple minutes to explain how you guys can get signed up, the pros of doing so, and what it's going to take to get you guys going today. One final thought is to make sure to download my free ebook, guys. I have an amazing guide and resource that I've spent a ton of time creating for you guys. It's going to help you guys a lot when knowing how to invest in the markets, understanding some ins and outs to cryptocurrency investing, and it goes through my trading plan and all of those things. I have a 10-part quiz included inside of there so you guys can go through, read all the information in the ebook, and then quiz yourself at the end so you retain all the information learned. So once again, guys, links are provided for you in the description to download that free ebook. And with all that being said, guys, let's jump right into this amazing video today. Alrighty guys, so here we are taking a look at Bitcoin on the dollar to start things off. Now Bitcoin has been doing exceptionally well. It's holed up and shown a lot of strength recently, and this is exactly what we wanted to see. Bitcoin really hasn't slowed down. It's shown a lot of consolidation, and it's really gotten any dip that we've had has been bought up pretty quickly. And so this is looking really good on the shorter time frames. As we can see, if we drop it in here, you know, Bitcoin to me just looks like it's kind of just building a base right here. You know, we're getting a little bit steeper and steeper, and I think that we're just getting ready before we get one more final blow off top. And to be quite honest, that's what it looks like to me. When I see this type of price structure, you know, we just broke out of the high. You know, this was the high that we had here at about 12,500. We broke out of that high. And in my opinion, this is us just kind of accumulating before we get one more final push on the upside. And then ultimately, I would expect a bigger correction to ensue. And that's really been the way that Bitcoin has consolidated up to this point. We get these rises, little short-term correction, rise, short-term correction, rise, correction. And honestly, I don't think that the rise is quite done yet. I do believe that we're going to get one more strong push up. And I've got a couple resistance levels that I have drawn for when we inevitably do that. And so what I wanted to share with you guys real quick right now is if we take the resistance that we had here at about 14K, as you guys can tell, we're just right in that resistance. And so we haven't really broken above it. We haven't really shown any weakness to where we're going to break below it. And so we're kind of just in this in-between stage. In my opinion, I do believe that the price is going to break up and we're going to get one more leg up. And to be quite honest, guys, on the weekly time frame, a pretty solid resistance. And quite honestly, the only resistance that I see coming up is here at about 16K. You know, it really shouldn't come as a surprise to see that Bitcoin could rip straight up to 16K before we get any type of correction back down. And so that's really going to be the next resistance that I'm targeting. Really 16.2 thousand on the weekly time frames. This is candle body resistance. During the time in which we topped out at 20,000, we had this first lower high. And really the top of the resistance of that lower high as far as candle bodies go, that lines up to 16,200. And that's going to be the thing that I'm going to watch out for. I do think that we're going to get one more push inside of Bitcoin that's going to take us up to this level. And so we should be ready and prepared for that. You know, ultimately, after we do get this leg up, I would expect a short-term correction. You know, a correction back down to around 14K, before ultimately heading upwards of 20,000 to close out the year. And so that's what I'm going to watch out for with Bitcoin. I think we'll get a little correction like we saw right here, like we saw right here, but we need a little bit more upside before we can fully get that correction. Now, one of the things I really wanted to talk about right now was just how we think the election is going to come into play with all of this, because, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty. Nobody knows really who's going to get elected, and there's big repercussions depending on which candidate actually does get elected. Obviously, you guys have probably heard the difference in tax plans between Trump and Biden, and this is a really big important thing to understand here. You know, there's going to be higher taxes with Biden than there would be with Trump, and so the market may absorb that news a little bit differently. Maybe we get a sell-off, maybe we get a little bit of a short-term panic, or maybe we get a panic no matter who gets elected, and the markets just have to adjust to that. These are things that I think we need to understand. For me personally, though, if I really had to make an assumption as far as what I think will happen, if Biden wins, I personally think that the markets would sell off some. You know, there's a higher tax plan, there's more shutdowns, there's more of these things that are going to be more negative, and so I think that the market would absorb that by selling off slightly. Now, if Trump were to win, I personally think that the markets are going to view that as a much more bullish outlook, and I think that the markets are going to actually start trending upwards because of that type of a news. You know, Trump's going to be in, lower taxes, he wants to open up the economy, he wants to do those types of things, which I think is going to be reflective in uptrending markets. And so that's what I'd be watching out for. That's my observation as of right now. I don't really know what's going to happen, and nobody really should understand what's going to happen ultimately, because at the end of the day, we have to watch and see how the world's going to react. We got to watch and see how the markets are going to react. And then that's what's going to ultimately decide what direction we go. For me, Bitcoin looks bullish. When I look at Bitcoin right now, it looks bullish for one more leg up, regardless of who's president. You know, maybe that's kind of maybe the proof is in the charts of who's going to get who's going to get elected, but we really don't know until the time comes. And so, watching for Bitcoin, one more leg up before we ultimately have a correction. Now, let's actually dive into some of the other charts here. Let's take a look at the US dollar index, because I think that this thing is looking really solid. And, you know, this, by the US dollar looking solid, this isn't very good for the cryptocurrency markets, because pretty much whatever the dollar index does, cryptocurrencies do the opposite. So this is really the inverted chart of cryptos. As you can see, COVID right here, about March 12th, we can see this big rise in the dollar index. This was COVID. So when the rest of the markets were selling off, when Bitcoin, when gold, silver, everything were selling off, the US dollar was rising because people were losing faith inside of the stock market and they needed stability, they needed a hedge. So what do they go for? Well, they go for the dollar. And that's why we saw this rise in the dollar index. Now, from that point, as cryptos, as gold, as stocks have been going up, the US dollar index has been trending down, right? Now, what's recently happened over the last few days is we've actually broken from our descending resistance of the US dollar index, and we are now seemingly retesting it as support. Now, something to keep in mind here is this itself looks to be a trend reversal of this bearish trend. And so we could see an uptrend inside of the dollar that takes us upwards of about 95 on the dollar index before ultimately maybe then we would experience a correction. Now, this itself could also be a fake out. That's something to understand here. If this actually sells back down below this and keeps going lower, that's something that we can pay attention for, because it's more than likely, because that's something that's definitely possible, and it's more than plausible, and we need to pay attention for it. Now, these are just the two scenarios I'm watching for. Either this is a support and resistance flip of the previous downtrend, and we're about to get one more strong impulse upwards of about, I would say, just under 96 on the US dollar index, or this is just a fake out and we're ultimately going to sell back below this trend line before going lower. Now, for me personally, at first glance, when I see this type of a trend line that has now been broken and we're retesting that, this looks more bullish than anything. I'm not going to be leaning that we're going to sell back below the trend line, because that's honestly just fighting the trend. If we've had this descending resistance, every time we hit it, we fall lower, lower lows, lower highs, all the way through until finally we broke out of that level, and now we're retesting it as support. In my opinion, that's much more of a bullish scenario, and I am not going to be labeling this as my primary. I personally think that we are retesting this as support, and we will get one more rise before this is done. And I think that that rise is ultimately going to take us over to here, just under 96, right? And that's where I'm going to be watching out for with the dollar. I think we're going to get one more bounce up in here, and ultimately that's not going to be super good for cryptos, which we should be looking for the bearish alternative if this is going to be the case. Now, I'm just pointing this what I'm seeing on the charts, and really, guys, what I see in the charts is a trend reversal. We had the downtrend. This is us flipping it and breaking out of that downtrend. So as long as support holds about where we're at right now, I would be expecting one more push inside of the dollar index. Now, let's go over here and take a look at gold, because honestly, guys, in my opinion, we're getting a little bit of a mixed emotion here inside of the markets. We can see that gold right now is starting to get a little bit of a buyback. We know this. We understand that gold has broken past its all-time highs, right? So this was the all-time high inside of gold, and this was when we broke it. So this itself is us retesting, that support level. So there's a couple of different levels that I'm personally watching for. I'm watching for about 1800 to about here at 1832. I was watching for this support level. I personally thought that gold was going to sell off and come for one more leg lower to retest this before we go up into price discovery. But it is possible that we could, bottom where we're at. It is possible because we are getting this little bit of a buyback in here. So that's a bonus for gold as it stands right now. Now, if we dive into the shorter time frames here, I wanted to share with you guys some important updates inside of gold so that we can understand what direction we should be looking to take positions, or really what direction we think it's going to be headed. Now, when I see this chart, we still are below descending resistance, right? So this has been the resistance that we've been below ever since the correction. Lower lows, lower highs, all the way through here. Every time we retest this, we go lower. And this is actually us coming back up, and it seems to be like we're going to be heading to retest this trend line once again. Now, the real question is support going to hold, or are we going to have to go back down for one more low? Now, the way it stands right now, support has held. This to me looks a little bit like a double bottom formation. Support has held, and we're coming back up to resistance. So if we get rejected at resistance right here, like all of the other times, then we would be expecting one more leg to about $1,800. And that's the way that I'm going to be playing this. Now, on the opposite approach, maybe we get a breakout of this level. Maybe we rally up, we come upwards of about $1,950 per ounce, and then we retest this as support. Ultimately, that is going to be a bullish, that's going to be a bullish breakout of this bear trend, and then ultimately I would be expecting gold to go into price discovery. And so we got to watch out for these key factors here. As long as gold is below this descending resistance, we should be bearish to new lows. If we can get a breakout of that, then ultimately that's where we'd be looking to average into new positions. Because if we could get a breakout of that downtrend here, something like this, then that's ultimately going to spell a breakout of the all-time highs, and that's going to create price discovery on the upside. And so that's what I'm going to be watching out for with gold. Realistically, we have this descending resistance. We're coming back into contact with that resistance after 2 attempts at support, failed breaks of either of those. And so if we can get a breakout of this trend line, that's going to be bullish for Bitcoin. And ultimately, guys, I think that if gold were to actually break out of this trend line, a lot of that hinges upon what happens with the US dollar index. Because we got to understand something here, guys. The US dollar index, although it has broken from this downtrend right here, although it is looking very bullish as far as that goes, this could still be a fake out, and we could still go lower. And so I think that gold is going to ultimately decide the fate of what happens with the dollar. If support fails right here and the dollar starts selling back off to new lows, then obviously value is going to be flooding into gold. It's going to be flooding into Bitcoin. It's going to be flooding into the altcoins even. And that's the thing that we need to understand. But as it stands right now, we have broken from our descending resistance here. So this is a breakout of the downtrend. As long as the US dollar is showing strength like this, I would expect gold to go down lower. And that's personally the way that I'm going to be playing this. We're sitting at resistance. There's no reason to get super leveraged, super bullish when we're right at major resistance, especially when the dollar index, which has been inversely correlated to gold and Bitcoin, is breaking out of its downtrend. Ultimately, the way it's looking, I'm personally leaning bearish. I'm personally leaning that the resistance will hold right here. But once again, it's all hinged upon what happens with the dollar. The only chart you should really pay attention to over the next couple weeks to month is going to be this dollar index. If the dollar index holds its support and we keep going up, expect the crypto markets, expect gold, expect even stocks to start selling off. And that makes sense. As we come up to this election year, specifically the election day on the 3rd is what we're at today, what we should expect to understand is that there's going to be a lot of uncertainty. Nobody really knows what direction the market's going to go. But we are seeing strength inside of the dollar, which tells me that there are players that are starting to hedge into the dollar, that are trying to protect their investments because there's just too much uncertainty inside of the markets. And so that's what I'm going to be watching out for with the dollar index. I'm personally leaning much more bullish on the dollar index because we have broken out. Because we're bullish in the dollar index, I would expect that gold is going to get rejected at this resistance, and then we would ultimately fall off to my target at $1,800. Now, with that being said, guys, Now, with that being said, guys, Bitcoin itself is kind of an outlier here. Now, like I've stated earlier, Bitcoin to me looks bullish. And that's personally what I'm going to be watching out for. You know, I think that Bitcoin is going to get one more leg up before ultimately selling off. And so we might see Bitcoin kind of do a little bit of an inverse correlation where the dollar index might pump. We might see gold actually reject off resistance, but we could see Bitcoin keep going up for one more leg higher. Now, understand, guys, that there's a lot of uncertainties here. The markets are showing a lot of mixed emotions, and that's the biggest reason why I wanted to give you guys this update. I want to dive into as many charts as I could to just share with you guys my thoughts and perspectives. Now, for me personally, do I have a bias? Well, my bias for Bitcoin is bullish. My bias for the dollar index is going to be bullish again. And my bias for gold is really hinged upon what happens with the dollar. If the dollar holds support, then I think that gold is going to be bearish. If the dollar actually starts to sell off again, then ultimately I think gold would do well, and it's going to fare well in that environment. Now, let's actually dive into the stock market and take a look at the S&P 500, because even the S&P is starting to show a little bit of a nice green on the daily time frame. So let's dive into the 4-hour here. Now, what I see right now is a rejection, and that's just plain and simple. You know, when we look at this, in my opinion, we have a pretty major resistance right here at about 3,000, at about 3,400. We have a pretty solid resistance on the SPY, and we can actually see that the prices are getting rejected at this level. This to me is a pretty ugly looking candlestick. This looks like seller, this looks like buyer exhaustion, and it looks to me like with us being right at a major resistance, we're going to sell off again. Now, this buyback came as the dollar itself was selling off. So we can see that the dollar sold off, and we can see that the stock market pumped. Now, the stock market's right at resistance, and the US dollar index is right at support. You know, the way it's looking to me, this does not look strong. This to me looks like we're going to get one more leg lower before this ultimately wraps up. And so where will this leg lower take us? Well, we're getting rejected at resistance. I think we're going to sell off. And when we sell off, let's drop to the weekly time frame and let's analyze a couple levels here. Now, level number one that I'm going to be watching out for is going to be about... Now, the level that I'm personally going to be watching for is going to be over here at about 3,000. I think that that's going to be a pretty logical level to be targeting if we do get a sell-off inside of the stocks. And I would really target two levels specifically. I'm going to be targeting about 3,125. Let's make these green so they're easy to tell what is support and what's not. So I would be targeting 3,000 and I would be targeting 3,125. These are going to be the two support levels that I would be watching out for. Personally, I'm bearish on the stock market. I think the stocks are going to sell off for one more leg, and ultimately that leg is going to take us to these support levels. Whichever one, it doesn't matter so much. Either or, I do expect that one of these two, or both, you know, it depends which one. I personally think that this level is going to hold. Somewhere in between both of these, I would expect support to hold before ultimately going into new all-time highs. And that's going to be the way that I'm going to be trading the stock market. I think that we're going to be heading for one more low in the wake of all of this. With the gold, with dollars showing such strength, I think that the rest of the markets are in for, you know, downside. Bitcoin itself is the one outlier here. Bitcoin itself is showing a lot of strength, and that doesn't really make a lot of sense because up to this point, Bitcoin has been negatively correlated to the US dollar index. Whatever the US dollar does, Bitcoin does the opposite. And so with the dollar showing strength, you know, and Bitcoin looking really bullish as well, you know, it's hard to say, but ultimately what I would have to say if I had to pick a side is if the dollar stays bullish, I think that cryptos, I think gold, and I think the stock market are all going to be bearish. And so we need to understand that right now. You know, it is possible that where we're at today, we could sell off. You know, if the dollar starts showing strength, Bitcoin might start selling off right here. And so that's something important to understand as we head into this election year. You know, we are right at resistance at this 14K level. I do think that we would get one more push upwards, but, you know, with the dollar showing strength, it's hard to say. I'm personally not fully convinced in either way. And that's why I'm going to be looking to do a lot of hedging, protecting some of my investments, maybe moving some into cash, because as it stands right now, with the dollar looking strong, you know, I don't want to bet against that because up to this point, whatever the dollar has done, Bitcoin does the opposite. If the dollar is showing strength, expect Bitcoin to do the opposite and actually go down. Now, one final chart before we wrap things up today. Now, another chart real quick is actually the Bitcoin dominance. And if we take a look at this on the weekly time frame, we can see that we had a nice buyback inside of the Bitcoin dominance. We're about right at that target that I was watching for at 64. In fact, we've peaked a little bit of above. So we're just under 65% right now. But once again, we're right below our major descending resistance. Here, here. And so I'm watching for another rejection here. You know, I think it'll come at some point right where we're at, roughly. And ultimately, the way it's looking, you know, market cap Bitcoin dominance looks to be right at resistance. Now, because the dominance is at resistance, I would expect this number to start selling off. Now, if the Bitcoin dominance is selling off, ultimately what happens with the altcoins? Well, with the altcoins pump, and this is where things are getting a little tricky here. We can see that the total market cap itself looks to be holding support, right? The US dollar, we can see that the total market cap of the cryptocurrency market seems to be holding support above the previous high. And so this is bullish. You know, we've broken out of two higher highs. We've broken out of the one at 14K. We've broken out of the one that we saw here. And so this is looking bullish. To me, this looks like we're going to be heading for one more leg higher, which is ultimately going to be taking us upwards of about 520 billion inside of the market cap. And that's what I'd be watching out for. As it stands right now, the total market cap is bullish, with Bitcoin showing signs of one more leg higher. Is it possible that this could sell off? Yes, it's very possible. But as it stands right now, we are holding support above the previous resistance levels. And so I would think that if Bitcoin goes up for a leg higher, we're going to see the total market cap rise as well. And so that's something to pay attention for. Now, when it comes to the altcoin total market cap, things look a little bit different. I'm not going to lie. I'm not quite sold on the altcoins right now. Now, what I wanted to see after we retested the support and started going higher, I wanted us to see us breaking out and following along with Bitcoin. But the altcoins haven't. In fact, they've been selling off. And so the way it's looking right now, this looks a lot more weak. And with the dollar showing strength, with us it being in this indecisive point, I would not be the least bit surprised to see altcoins go for one more leg lower and actually fill those lower targets that I had down here at about $100 billion. Or for Ethereum, about $250. Now, this is something important to understand because ultimately I want you guys to be protected. This video is me diving into all of the charts that I possibly can to give you guys an analysis that is really just indicative of where I think the direction of the market is going. And the way it stands right now, with the dollar showing strength, with gold right at major resistance, Bitcoin's really the only thing that's showing strength. Even the stock market is right at resistance, looking like it wants more downside. I personally am leaning towards altcoins potentially taking that leg lower that I was expecting. Now, potentially taking that leg lower that I was watching for. Now, I've been updating guys, and as we were impulsing, I was labeling that I wasn't thinking that it was so likely anymore. But the way that we've actually started selling off, I'm leaning to more of a bearish outcome for altcoins. The way this looks, I personally think that we might be headed for one more leg lower. And so I just wanted to give you guys this update so we're all aware of what I'm expecting long term. You know, there's a little bit of indecision with Bitcoin right now. The market structure itself looks bullish. And so I'm going to continue to lead bullish with Bitcoin until it proves me wrong. You know, Bitcoin dominance is climbing right out of major resistance level. The dollar index is retesting support after a breakout of a trend. Gold itself is once again right at major resistance, and then the stocks are at major resistance. And so we have a few markets that are at resistance. It really hinges upon what happens with the dollar index. If the dollar index breaks back below and we keep selling off, expect cryptos, expect gold, expect everything else to go up. If the dollar index starts pumping, expect everything to start going down. So be aware. Make sure you guys have this chart bookmarked so you understand and know what to be waiting for and what to be expecting. And anyways, guys, this is the update I had for you. Thank you all so much for the support of this channel. It means a lot that I get to do this for you guys every single day. One of the things I want to talk about before we wrap things up is just the fact that if you guys are watching my channel, you appreciate what I do, you like all of my analysis, and you want to get even more insight as to what I'm doing inside of this channel, then you guys should definitely check out my VIP content. Now, I offer two different packages. I have my video course and I have my signals. The video course is really a 20 educational video series that I've made to teach you guys technical analysis inside of the cryptocurrency markets. So if you guys see me drawing on these charts, you want to understand how to do that for yourself, I have a course that you guys can actually purchase, and it is inside of my Discord server where you can actually grab that. Now, I also offer the signals. The signals are a really informational way for you guys to follow along with every single one of the trades that I take. You guys will copy every trade that I take. You'll know exactly what price I enter, where I'm going to exit, where I'm moving profits to, and then I've also got my long-term portfolio. So you guys can get in there, follow, copy along with my long-term portfolio, and then make the profit with me over this next cycle. I also post private VIP videos that are only mentioned inside of the signals, so I don't post them on YouTube. They're only for private members inside of my VIP content. And so if you guys want to get access to all of my private groups, you know, you want to be able to copy my portfolio, you want to make the same profits with me, you guys should definitely check out what I have here inside of my signals. Now, you guys can find the links inside the description of this video to sign up for both of those. You guys can purchase them together or you can purchase them separate. If you can only pick one, I always recommend going with the signals first and foremost, because the signals are going to be the way for you guys to copy my portfolio, copy the trades that I take, and then make that profit. And ultimately, if you guys want to pursue the course afterwards, you can take your profit and then diversify it into that. So once again, guys, links are provided for you in the description to the website to sign up for my VIP content. One final thing, guys, is if you don't want to sign up for any of my VIP content, make sure you guys check out my ebook. 38 pages long. It's full of exciting information, and it's a really good study guide that's going to help you new guys getting into the markets. It's honestly a thing that I wish I would have had in the last cycle, because it really teaches you guys a lot of key concepts that I use every single day when it comes to investing. And so I've gone through, made it for you guys. It's free for that exact purpose. I wanted to give you guys a guide that would really help you guys get on the right path of profiting, and this is the one for you. On top of that, I've got a bunch of terminology. I also have a 10-part quiz in there, so you guys can go through, read all the content of the ebook, and then quiz yourself at the end so you retain all of that information learned. So once again, guys, links are provided for you in the description to sign up for my VIP content or download my ebook. Thank you guys so much for the support, and with all that being said, guys, I will catch you in the next video. As always, peace out.